So this happened over the last week and I'm still processing everything. But I need to get this out because I'm furious and everyone keeps telling me I overreacted. Spoiler alert, I didn't. Megan and I had been together for 3 years. We moved in together last year, got a joint checking account for rent and bills, the whole adult relationship thing. She had this friend Erica who I always thought was trouble. They'd been friends since college, and Erica was one of those people who made every conversation about the last guy she hooked up with or which club had the best bottle service. Whatever, not my friend, not my problem. About 3 weeks ago, Megan mentioned she wanted to go to Vegas with her cousins for a weekend. Her cousin Jerome was turning 30, and apparently they were planning this big celebration. She got defensive immediately when I asked basic questions like when and where they were staying. Told me I was being controlling and that I needed to stop interrogating her about a simple family trip. We had a massive argument about it in our apartment on a Thursday night, where she said I was exactly like her ex who never let her do anything fun. I backed off because honestly, who wants to be compared to a toxic ex? Here's what I didn't know at the time. Erica was going. This wasn't a family trip. This was Erica's birthday weekend that she'd been planning for 2 months and Megan had been lying to me about it since the beginning. I found out because my brother Owen follows Jerome on Instagram and saw him post something about getting ready for Erica's Vegas birthday bash with a group photo that included Megan. Owen screenshot it and sent it to me asking why Megan told me it was a family thing. That was Wednesday, 2 days before she was supposed to leave. I didn't confront her immediately. I wish I could say it was because I'm strategic or smart, but honestly, I was just shocked. Like, she'd looked me in the face multiple times talking about this wholesome family celebration, and it was completely fabricated. So I started watching. I checked our joint account that night and saw she'd been making weird transfers. Little amounts at first, $200 here, $150 there, all going into her personal account over the past 2 weeks. Then, on Wednesday afternoon, a $1,800 transfer with the memo Vegas Fund. She left on Friday morning, kissed me goodbye, said she'd text me when she landed, reminded me to feed her fish. I watched her pack and noticed she definitely wasn't packing like someone going to hang out with family. The dresses she brought were the kind she wore when we first started dating, and she was trying to impress me. Not the kind you wear to a casual family dinner. The Instagram stories started Friday night. Jerome posted videos of them arriving at some massive hotel suite. Bottles of champagne everywhere. Megan and Erica and 3 other girls I didn't recognize screaming and dancing. The caption was, "Finally free Vegas baby." Not a single mention of it being anyone's birthday. Not a single cousin in sight besides Jerome, who was clearly just there to party. Then Saturday is when everything really started. I'm talking post after post after post. Megan uploaded a story of herself at a pool party with some caption about acting single for the weekend. Another video of her doing body shots off some DJ's stomach at a club. Erica posted one of Megan making out with a club promoter with the caption, "Who needs a man when you've got Vegas?" And then, Erica's friend, who I'd never met in my life, messaged me directly. Just sent me a screenshot of Megan dancing with random guys with the text, "Bet you're jealous at Owen." Except she tagged my actual Instagram handle, so I'd definitely see it. I sat in our apartment Saturday night watching my girlfriend's entire Vegas escapade play out across social media in real time. She hadn't texted me once since landing. Not one message. But she'd posted probably 30 stories across Instagram and Snapchat. My phone kept buzzing with messages from friends asking if I'd seen what Megan was doing. My buddy texted me, "Bro, is your girl okay?" Someone else sent me a screenshot I hadn't even seen yet of her with some guy's arms around her at a blackjack table. Sunday morning, I checked the joint account again. Another $2,300 was gone. The transaction just said bottle service. She'd drained almost our entire rent payment for next month on bottle service. That's when something just clicked for me. I wasn't sad or hurt anymore. I was angry. Like, the audacity of this woman to call me controlling when she's been planning this behind my back for weeks, to lie about it being a family trip, to drain our shared money, and then to blast her cheating all over social media for everyone we know to see. And the thing is, I realized she wanted me to see it. This wasn't accidental. You don't post that much that publicly unless you want someone to know what you're doing. Sunday afternoon, Jerome posted an Instagram story that made everything crystal clear about where Megan's head was at. Video of her walking into some high-rise building at 3 a.m., clearly drunk, with some guy's arm around her waist. Jerome had tagged the location as Penthouse Suite Goals, and you could see Megan laughing and stumbling in her heels. That was at 3 a.m. Vegas time, which meant 6 a.m. for me, which meant I'd been awake all night watching this train wreck. I need to be clear about something. I wasn't sitting there crying or feeling sorry for myself. I was calculating. See, Megan's car? The title was in my name because she had bad credit when we bought it 8 months ago and I'd co-signed. She was supposed to refinance it into her name, but kept putting it off. The credit card she'd been using for Vegas purchases? I was the primary account holder and she was an authorized user because we'd gotten it together for building her credit score. Our apartment lease? Both our names. But I'd paid the entire security deposit and last month's rent up front when we moved in. By Monday morning, I'd made calls to the credit card company, called my insurance to remove her car from the policy, and contacted a buddy who runs a used car lot about how quickly he could move a vehicle. Megan's flight back was Tuesday evening. I had roughly 36 hours to handle everything. The thing nobody's talking about is how Megan's family is going to react to all this. Her sister Lorraine has always thought I wasn't good enough for Megan, has made comments about how Megan settled when she got serious with me. Her brother Richard is super protective and has this whole nobody disrespects my sister attitude. They're going to lose their minds when this all comes out, but not in the way you'd think. I spent Monday packing Megan's things. And when I say packing, I mean everything. Clothes, shoes, makeup, that expensive hair straightener she loves, her books, her decorations, all of it. Put it all in garbage bags and boxes. My brother Owen came over to help and kept asking if I was sure about this. Yeah, I was sure. You don't publicly humiliate someone and expect to come home to business as usual. Tuesday morning at 8 a.m., I canceled her credit card access, called the company, explained she was an authorized user, and I wanted her removed immediately. Done. Then, I drove her car to my buddy's lot. Silver 2019 sedan, decent condition. He gave me $8,500 cash for it on the spot. Signed the title over right there. Took about 45 minutes total. Megan's flight landed at 6 p.m. Tuesday. I know because I'd checked her flight info before she left. She should have been back at the apartment by 7:30 p.m. depending on traffic from the airport. At 7:15 p.m., my phone started going crazy. Update 1. Okay, so the comments on my last post have been wild, and I appreciate everyone who told me I did the right thing. But buckle up because this situation has gotten so much messier than I ever expected. To everyone who said her family would take my side once they saw what she did, you were wrong. Dead wrong. And now, I'm dealing with consequences I didn't even think about. So when I left off, Megan's flight had just landed Tuesday evening and my phone started blowing up. First text came through at 7:14 p.m., asking where I was and why I wasn't answering. Then at 7:18 p.m., she's asking why her Uber card isn't working. By 7:30 p.m., I had 15 texts ranging from confused to angry asking what was going on and why her credit card was being declined. I didn't respond to any of them. I sat in our apartment with all her stuff packed in bags by the door and I waited. She'd posted all weekend about how finally free she was and how she didn't need a man, so I figured she could figure out her own ride home from the airport. Around 8:45 p.m., she managed to get home somehow. I'm guessing she borrowed money from someone or convinced an Uber driver to take payment at the destination. I don't know and I don't care. I heard her key in the lock and then heard her struggling because I'd put the chain lock on. She started pounding on the door immediately asking what the hell was going on and why was the chain locked. I opened the door and just stood there. She looked rough, still in her Vegas outfit, makeup smeared, hair a mess, pulling this massive suitcase. She tried to push past me and I blocked her way and told her she needed to take her things and leave. That's when she completely lost it, started yelling about how this was her apartment too, and I couldn't just lock her out and what the hell was wrong with me. I told her maybe she should have thought about that before she spent the entire weekend posting videos of herself cheating on me for everyone we know to see. She immediately switched tactics and started saying those videos weren't what they looked like and I was overreacting to her just having fun with friends. We stood in that doorway for probably 20 minutes, going back and forth. She kept insisting she didn't cheat, that she was just drunk and being stupid, that the guy in the penthouse was Jerome's friend, and nothing happened. I asked her about the club promoter she was making out with in Erica's story. She said that was just playing around for the camera, and it didn't mean anything. I asked her why she lied about it being a family trip. She said she knew I'd be weird about Erica going, so she just simplified it to avoid an argument. Every single thing had an excuse. Every lie had a justification. And the whole time she's standing there acting like I'm the one being unreasonable for being upset about it. I finally told her about the car. Watched her face go completely white when I said I'd sold it. She started screaming about how that was her car and I had no right and she needed it for work. I reminded her the title was in my name, and legally it was mine to sell. She tried to shove past me again and I didn't budge. Told her all her stuff was packed and she needed to figure out where she was staying tonight because it wasn't here. That's when she pulled out her phone and called her sister Lorraine. put it on speaker right there in the hallway so I could hear everything, told Lorraine that I'd sold her car and locked her out and was keeping all her stuff hostage. Notice how she didn't mention anything about Vegas or the posts or the lying. Just made it sound like I'd randomly decided to destroy her life for no reason. Lorraine was at our apartment within 30 minutes. She lives like 15 minutes away and clearly broke every speed limit getting there. She came in hot, immediately got in my face about how I couldn't legally keep Megan from her own home, and if I didn't let her in, she was calling the police. I told her to go ahead and call them. Told her Megan had drained our joint account, lied about where she was going, and posted herself cheating all weekend. Lorraine literally laughed and said Megan told her about my controlling behavior, and this just proved it. See, here's what I didn't fully understand until this moment. Megan had been complaining to her family about me for months. Apparently I was too boring, too strict about money, didn't want her to have fun, always questioned where she was going. Lorraine had this whole narrative in her head about me being this controlling boyfriend who was holding Megan back from living her life. So when Megan showed up claiming I'd trapped her at the airport and sold her car, it fit perfectly with everything Megan had been telling her family about me. I pulled up Instagram on my phone and tried to show Lorraine the posts from the weekend. She barely glanced at them, said Megan was allowed to have fun with her friends and go to clubs without my permission. I showed her the video of Megan walking into that guy's penthouse at 3 a.m. Lorraine said I was being paranoid and that was probably just an after-party. I showed her the caption about acting single. She said it was just a joke and I needed to stop being so insecure. Nothing I showed her mattered because she'd already decided I was the villain in this story. Megan ended up leaving with Lorraine that night. Took about half the bags I'd packed. But here's where it gets complicated. Megan refused to take everything. She insisted that since her name was on the lease, she had every right to keep her stuff in the apartment and come back whenever she wanted. Lorraine backed her up and said legally, Megan couldn't be forced out without proper eviction procedures. I looked into it the next day and they're technically right. Both our names are on the lease through March, another 6 months. I can't just change the locks and keep her out. The landlord said if we both signed the lease, then we both have equal rights to the property. And I'd need to either get her to voluntarily leave or go through a formal eviction process, which takes months. Wednesday afternoon, Megan showed up with Lorraine while I was at work. I only know because my neighbor texted me saying she saw them going in and out multiple times. When I got home, more of her stuff was gone, but she'd also gone through the apartment and taken things that were mine. My gaming console was gone. My laptop was gone. A bunch of groceries I just bought were gone. She'd even taken the coffee maker we'd bought together. I called her immediately. She actually answered this time. Told me that since I sold her car and canceled her credit card, she was entitled to take things to compensate for what I'd cost her. Said the gaming console and laptop were worth less than what the car was worth, so actually, she was being generous. I told her that's called theft and she could return my stuff or I'd report it. She laughed and said, good luck proving it was mine and not ours since we lived together. Thursday morning, I got a call from my landlord. Megan had contacted him asking about getting me removed from the lease. She told him I'd become aggressive, and she didn't feel safe living with me anymore. My landlord knows me pretty well. We've talked before, and I've never been late on rent, so he told me about it instead of just processing her request. But he also said that if she files a formal complaint about feeling unsafe, there's procedures he has to follow. That same day, Richard, Megan's brother, showed up at my work, just walked right into the building and asked the receptionist for me. When I came out to the lobby, he immediately started in about how I'd better return Megan's property and stop harassing her, or we were going to have problems. I told him to get out before I called security. He said Megan had told him everything about how controlling I'd been and how I'd financially trapped her, and he wasn't going to let me keep treating his sister like that. My coworkers saw the whole thing. My boss had to come out and ask Richard to leave. Richard made a huge scene on his way out, yelling about how I was going to regret this and how his family protects each other. After he left, my boss pulled me aside and asked what was going on. I had to explain the entire situation to him right there at work, which was humiliating. Here's what makes me absolutely insane about all of this. Megan's family is treating her like the victim. They're completely ignoring everything she did in Vegas. They don't care that she lied, that she publicly humiliated me, that she drained our joint account. All they see is that I sold her car and canceled her credit card, and now she's stranded with no transportation, and they think I'm the bad guy. And the apartment situation is a nightmare. I can't afford the full rent on my own for the next 6 months. The lease is $1,850 a month, and we were splitting it. Megan's half was $925, and that was manageable for me to cover, but I can't cover the full amount plus my other bills. But I also can't force her to pay her half because she's not living there anymore, and she's claiming I forced her out. The landlord said if the full rent isn't paid, we're both in violation of the lease. and we'll both be liable for the remainder of the lease term plus penalties. I talked to a lawyer yesterday just to understand my options. He said the apartment situation is messy because we're both on the lease and neither of us can be removed without the other's consent or a court order. He said I could sue her for her half of rent, but that would take months and there's no guarantee I'd win. He also said her taking my gaming console and laptop is technically a civil matter since we live together and I'd have to prove ownership, which is hard when you don't have receipts. The Vegas posts are still up. All of them. Megan hasn't deleted a single one. I've had at least a dozen people reach out asking if we broke up or what's going on. Some of our mutual friends have taken her side saying I'm overreacting and relationships have rough patches. Her friend Erica posted something on her story yesterday about fake people and knowing who your real friends are, clearly directed at me. I'm getting pressure from every direction. Lorraine has been texting me saying I need to work this out with Megan and stop being childish. My own parents think I should have at least talked to her before selling her car. Owen is the only one who's completely on my side, and he keeps telling me to stand my ground. But here's the thing nobody's acknowledging. Megan still hasn't actually apologized. She hasn't said she was sorry for lying, sorry for the posts, sorry for anything. She's just mad about the consequences. I checked our joint account this morning and she'd made another transfer. Moved $400 out yesterday for who knows what. The account still has both our names on it and I can't remove her without her signature. I immediately transferred everything that was left into my personal account because I'm not leaving money sitting there for her to take. The update people wanted. Megan has not learned anything. Her family has not seen reason. I'm stuck in a lease with someone who hates me, fighting with her family, and trying to figure out how to legally protect myself while everyone acts like I'm the problem. And Lorraine keeps calling. Update 2. This situation has officially spiraled into absolute chaos. And I need to vent because half the people in my life think I'm handling this perfectly and the other half think I've lost my mind. For everyone who asked for an update, you're getting one. And it's messier than you can imagine. So last time I mentioned Lorraine kept calling. That continued for 3 straight days. She'd call, I'd ignore it. She'd leave voicemails ranging from trying to guilt-trip me about family and working things out to straight up threatening me about what Richard was going to do if I didn't cooperate. I finally blocked her number on Friday, which apparently made everything worse because then she started showing up. Friday evening, I'm at the grocery store getting food for the week, and I'm in the produce section comparing prices on chicken when I hear someone say my name really loud. I turn around and it's Richard. He's standing there with this expression on his face, like he's about to start something, and there's people everywhere shopping. He walks right up to me and starts going off about how I'm dodging his family and how I need to face what I did to Megan. I told him we're in a grocery store and this isn't the place. He said he didn't care, that I'd been avoiding him and Lorraine for days and someone needed to make me listen. People are starting to stare at this point. He's going on about how Megan can't get to work without a car, how she's struggling financially because of what I did, how her job performance is suffering, and it's all my fault. I asked him if Megan told him why I sold the car. He said, yeah, she told him I got mad about her going on a trip with friends. I asked if she showed him the Instagram posts. He said he saw them, and they were just her having fun. I asked specifically about the video of her walking into a penthouse with some random guy at 3 a.m. Richard actually laughed and said I was being insecure and that Megan was allowed to have male friends and go to parties. The conversation went in circles for probably 10 minutes right there in the produce section. He kept defending everything she did and saying I was controlling. I kept pointing out specific things she'd done, and he'd have some excuse for all of it. The lying about it being a family trip? She was protecting herself from my controlling behavior. The money from our joint account? She was entitled to use it for her vacation. The posts? Just having fun. And I needed to get over it. Then he switched tactics and started talking about how I was legally obligated to provide Megan access to the apartment and how I couldn't just take her car without consequences. Told me his family was considering legal action for what I'd done. I told him the car was legally mine and I could do whatever I wanted with it. He said we'd see about that when their lawyer got involved. I left my cart right there and walked out. Richard followed me to the parking lot, still yelling about how I couldn't run from this forever. I got in my car and drove off. He took a picture of my license plate, which I'm sure was supposed to be intimidating. When I got home, there were 3 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. Voicemail was from Megan's mother. I'd met her maybe twice in 3 years. She lived a few hours away and wasn't really involved in Megan's life, but apparently Lorraine had called her and told her everything. Well, Lorraine's version of everything, and now Megan's mom wanted to talk to me about working things out for Megan's sake. I didn't call her back. Saturday morning, my landlord called again. Megan had been by the building twice more that week taking things from the apartment while I was at work. My neighbor had reported it to him because she wasn't sure if Megan was still allowed to be there. Landlord said he couldn't stop her since she's on the lease, but he wanted me to know it was happening. He also said Megan had asked him again about removing me from the lease, and when he said that wasn't possible without my consent, she'd asked about breaking the lease entirely. Here's the thing about breaking the lease. If either of us wants out, we both have to agree, and we both have to pay the penalty, which is 2 months' rent. That's $3,700. Split between us would be $1,850 each. But Megan wants me to pay the entire penalty as a punishment for selling her car. She actually told the landlord that I should have to cover it since I'm the one who made the apartment uninhabitable for her. I called the landlord back and told him I'm not paying to break the lease and I'm not agreeing to remove myself. If Megan wants out, she can pay her half of the penalty or she can keep paying her half of the monthly rent for the next 6 months. He said he understood, but that the situation was putting him in an awkward position, and he'd really prefer if we could work it out. Sunday afternoon, Megan showed up at the apartment for the first time when I was actually home. She knocked on the door, and when I answered, she had Lorraine with her again, plus a guy I didn't recognize. She said he was a locksmith, and she wanted to add an additional lock to the apartment door so she could have her own key that I couldn't use. Said since she was on the lease, she was entitled to have secure access. I told her absolutely not. She said I couldn't stop her. I said this was my home too, and I wasn't agreeing to any changes to the locks. The locksmith looked uncomfortable and said he needed both tenants to agree before he could do work on a rental property anyway. Megan got angry and said she'd find a different locksmith who didn't care about tenant agreements. That's when we had the first real, long conversation since she'd gotten back from Vegas. Lorraine and the locksmith kind of backed off, and it was just me and Megan in the hallway outside the apartment. She said she needed us to figure this out because the situation wasn't working for either of us. I agreed. She said she wanted to move back in and have us live separately in the apartment until the lease was up. I asked how that would even work in a one-bedroom apartment. She said she'd take the bedroom and I could sleep on the couch. I laughed. I actually laughed in her face. Told her there was no way I was giving up my bed in my apartment so she could move back in after everything she did. She said it wasn't my apartment, it was our apartment, and she had just as much right to be there as I did. I said she made her choice when she decided to publicly cheat on me all weekend and she could live with the consequences. Megan said for the 100th time that she didn't cheat, said she was drunk and having fun and I was twisting everything to make her look bad. I pulled out my phone and pulled up the Instagram stories that I'd screenshot before Jerome made his profile private. Started going through them one by one. The body shots, the making out with the club promoter, the caption about acting single, the penthouse at 3 a.m. She had an explanation for every single one. The body shots were just a game everyone was playing. The club promoter was gay and they were just messing around for photos. The acting single caption was Erica's idea and was supposed to be funny. The penthouse was an after party and nothing happened and I was paranoid. I asked her why she lied about it being a family trip. She said she didn't lie. It was a family trip. Jerome was there. I said Jerome doesn't count as family when there's 5 other people there, including Erica, who she specifically hid from me. She said I was being ridiculous and trying to control who she could be friends with. I asked why she drained our joint account without telling me. She said it was her money too, and she was allowed to use it. We went back and forth like this for probably 45 minutes. Every point I made, she had a counter-argument. Every piece of evidence I showed her, she had an explanation. And the whole time, she kept turning it back on me and my controlling behavior and how I'd always had a problem with her having fun. Finally, I asked her straight up, "Do you think you did anything wrong in Vegas?" She said no. Said she went on a trip with friends, had fun, posted some pictures, and came home to find out her boyfriend had sold her car and stolen her credit card. Said from her perspective, she was the victim here, and I owed her an apology. I told her to get out. She said this was her apartment too. I went inside and closed the door. She stood out there knocking for another 10 minutes before she finally left with Lorraine. Monday is when things got really complicated. I got to work and my boss pulled me aside first thing. Said he'd gotten a call from someone claiming to be Megan's sister asking about my employment status and whether I'd been written up for the incident with Richard last week. My boss said he didn't give out any information, but he wanted me to know someone was making calls about me. Then he asked if this situation was going to continue affecting my work because he needed to know if we had a problem. I had to sit there in my boss's office and promise him this wouldn't be an ongoing issue while internally panicking about what Lorraine was trying to do. Was she trying to get me fired? Was she just gathering information? I don't even know. That same day I got an email, yes. Megan actually emailed me because I'd blocked her number by this point, with a formal demand letter. Not from a real lawyer, just something she'd clearly written herself or copied from the internet. It said I owed her $8,500 for the car, $2,000 for emotional distress, and $1,850 for my half of the lease-breaking penalty. Said if I didn't pay within 10 days, she'd be pursuing legal action. I forwarded it to the lawyer I'd consulted before. He said it was nonsense and not legally binding, but that she could technically try to sue me in small claims court. He said she'd likely lose, but it would still be time and hassle to deal with. He also said the emotional distress claim was ridiculous and would never hold up. Tuesday afternoon. I'm at the apartment and I hear someone using a key in the door. Megan walks in with two large suitcases and starts heading for the bedroom. I asked what she was doing. She said she was moving back in and I couldn't stop her because her name was on the lease. I told her she couldn't just decide to move back in without discussing it. She said there was nothing to discuss. This was her home, and she was staying. I stood in front of the bedroom door. She tried to push past me. I didn't move. She said I was physically preventing her from accessing her own home, and that was illegal. I said she'd been staying with Lorraine for over a week and couldn't just show up and take over. She said watch her. We stood there in this standoff for probably 20 minutes. She kept demanding I move. I kept refusing. Finally, she left her suitcases in the living room and said fine. She'd sleep on the couch then. Said she'd be documenting all of this for when she took me to court. So now Megan is living in the apartment again, on the couch, in the same space as me. We're not speaking except when absolutely necessary. She's been making a point of being here as much as possible, like she's trying to establish residency or something. She cooks food and leaves dishes in the sink. She takes up the entire bathroom for hours. She plays music loud. She has Lorraine over constantly. The apartment is a WR zone, and I still have 5 months left on this lease. Yesterday, I checked my credit report because something made me paranoid about what else Megan might have done. Found out she'd opened a subscription to some streaming service using my email and payment method without telling me. Canceled it immediately. Makes me wonder what else I'm going to find. I've started sleeping with my bedroom door locked. I don't trust what she might do while I'm asleep. Owen keeps telling me to just move out and eat the cost, but I refuse. I'm not letting her win by forcing me out of my own apartment. I was here first in terms of moving my stuff back in after she left. This is my space now, and she's the one invading it. But I'm exhausted. This is affecting everything. My work, my sleep, my mental state. And Megan shows no signs of backing down. Final update. Okay, this is going to be my last update because the situation has finally reached a conclusion. And I need to tell you how this all played out. Some of you called it in the comments. Some of you are going to be shocked. But either way, here's how everything fell apart for Megan. So when I left off, Megan had moved back into the apartment, and we were living in this awful, hostile roommate situation. That lasted exactly 4 more days before everything exploded in a way I didn't expect. Wednesday morning, I woke up to the internet being shut off. Thought it was just an outage until I checked my email and saw a notification that the internet bill hadn't been paid in 2 months. I'd set up autopay when we first moved in, but apparently Megan had changed the payment method to her personal account back in July and then never paid it. The service got disconnected for non-payment. I called the internet company. They said the account was in both our names, but the payment method was linked to Megan's bank account, and the last 2 payments had been declined. I asked how much was owed. $240 total plus a reconnection fee. I told them to change the payment method back to my account and paid it right there. But they said it would take 5 business days to restore service. When Megan got home from wherever she'd been that afternoon, I confronted her about it. She said she'd forgotten to pay it, and it wasn't a big deal. I said she'd changed the payment method without telling me, and now I had to cover her portion. She said I could afford it, and she couldn't. I asked what happened to all the money she'd been earning while not paying rent or bills. She didn't answer. That's when I started checking everything. Pulled up the electric bill. 2 months behind, in both our names, linked to her payment method. Water bill, same thing. She'd systematically changed every utility to her payment method and then stopped paying them. I was looking at almost $600 in overdue utilities plus reconnection fees and late charges. I asked her what the hell she'd been doing with her money if she wasn't paying any bills. She said that was none of my business and that I'd forced her into this position by selling her car and ruining her financially. I said she'd ruined herself by draining our joint account for Vegas. She said I was still hung up on Vegas and needed to get over it. We had this massive, screaming argument in the apartment. I told her I was paying all the overdue bills and then I was deducting her half from anything she claimed I owed her for the car. She said that wasn't how it worked. I said that's exactly how it works. She said she'd take me to court. I told her to go ahead because I had proof of everything. Thursday, I'm at work and I get a text from an unknown number. It's Jerome. He'd gotten my number from Megan's phone apparently and wanted to talk to me about what happened in Vegas. I was suspicious immediately because why would Jerome reach out now 2 weeks later? We ended up talking on the phone during my lunch break. Jerome said he felt bad about how everything went down and wanted me to know that he'd tried to get Megan to calm down during the trip, but she wouldn't listen. He said Megan had been talking about breaking up with me for months before Vegas. Said she'd told him and Erica that she felt trapped in the relationship and that I was too boring and she wanted to be single again. This wasn't news to me at this point, but hearing it confirmed made me angry all over again. I asked Jerome why he was telling me this now. He said because Megan had been blowing up his phone, asking him to help her testify that nothing happened in Vegas, that all the posts were innocent, and he didn't want to get involved in whatever she was planning. He also told me something I didn't know. The guy whose penthouse Megan went to at 3 a.m., that was someone Erica had been seeing, and Megan had known they were going to his place. It wasn't some spontaneous after-party. Erica had planned it, and Megan had gone willingly. Jerome said he'd tried to get Megan to just come back to the hotel, but she'd told him to stop being controlling just like me. I asked if anything happened with Megan and anyone else at that penthouse. Jerome said he left before they got there, so he didn't know. But the way Megan was acting all weekend made it pretty clear she wasn't thinking about me at all. I thanked Jerome for telling me, and he said he just wanted to be honest because Megan was trying to rewrite what happened, and he didn't think that was fair. He also said Erica was mad at him for reaching out to me, and they'd had a fight about it, so the whole friend group from Vegas was basically imploding. Friday afternoon, Megan came home early from work and she was upset. Like crying, makeup running, the whole thing. I asked what happened, and she said her boss had called her in for a meeting about her performance. Apparently, she'd been late multiple times in the past 2 weeks, had missed a deadline on a project, and had been distracted and unfocused. Her boss had given her a formal warning and said if things didn't improve, she'd be put on a performance improvement plan. Megan blamed me for all of it, said the stress of our situation was affecting her work, and it was my fault for making everything so difficult. I said maybe if she'd thought about consequences before Vegas, none of this would be happening. She said I was being cruel and that I clearly didn't care about her at all anymore. I told her she was right. I didn't care about her anymore. Said she'd made it very clear in Vegas that she didn't care about me, so why should I care about her now? She said that wasn't fair and that she'd made mistakes, but I was punishing her too harshly. I said she still hadn't actually apologized for anything. She broke down crying and said she was sorry. She was sorry for lying about the trip, sorry for the posts, sorry for everything. But here's the thing. It didn't feel real. It felt like she was apologizing because she was facing consequences, not because she actually regretted what she did. I asked her if she was sorry she did it or sorry she got caught. She didn't answer. That weekend, Lorraine showed up again. At this point, I was so tired of dealing with Megan's family that I almost didn't answer the door. But she kept knocking, so I finally opened it. She said we needed to talk about Megan's situation because things were getting out of hand. Lorraine said Megan couldn't afford to live anywhere else right now because she'd drained her savings paying for Vegas and covering her bills at Lorraine's place while she was staying there. She said Megan needed to stay in the apartment for financial reasons, but that I was making it impossible for her to live there comfortably. I said Megan made her own choices and could deal with her own consequences. Lorraine said their family was considering helping Megan take me to court for damages. I said go ahead. She said they had a cousin who was a paralegal and could help them file the paperwork. I said I'd already talked to an actual lawyer and felt confident about my position. Lorraine said I was being stubborn and vindictive and that Megan was family and family protects each other. I asked Lorraine if she'd actually watched all the videos from Vegas. She said yes. I asked if she really thought Megan did nothing wrong. She said Megan was just having fun and yes, she maybe took it too far with some of the posts, but that I'd escalated things by selling her car. I said Megan escalated things by publicly cheating and humiliating me. Lorraine said I had no proof Megan actually cheated. We went in circles like this for an hour. Nothing I said made any difference to Lorraine because she'd already decided her sister was the victim and I was the villain. Eventually, she left but said this wasn't over. Monday morning, I got to work and found out Richard had shown up at my office building again. Security had stopped him this time and told him he wasn't allowed on the property. My boss called me in and said we needed to address this situation immediately because it was becoming disruptive. He said he understood I was going through personal issues, but I needed to keep them from affecting the workplace or there would be consequences. I had to promise my boss that I'd handle it and that Richard wouldn't show up again. I called Owen and asked him to help me figure out how to deal with Richard. Owen said he'd talk to Richard directly and tell him to back off. I don't know what Owen said, but Richard stopped showing up after that. Tuesday afternoon, the landlord called me. Said he'd received a formal complaint from Megan about the living conditions in the apartment. She'd told him I was harassing her, preventing her from using shared spaces, and creating a hostile environment. The landlord said he'd been patient with our situation, but that he couldn't have tenants filing complaints against each other, and if we couldn't work it out, he'd have to take action against both of us. I asked what kind of action. He said he could file for eviction of both of us based on lease violations and creating disturbances. I said that seemed extreme. He said the situation was extreme, and he had other tenants in the building complaining about noise and arguments. That's when I made a decision. I told the landlord I wanted to break the lease and I'd pay my half of the penalty if Megan would pay hers. He said he'd reach out to Megan about it. Wednesday morning, Megan came into the living room where I was getting ready for work and said she'd talk to the landlord. Said she couldn't afford the lease break penalty, but that if I paid the full amount, she'd agree to it and move out. I said absolutely not. She said then we were stuck here together. I asked her how long she thought she could keep this up. She said, as long as it took. I asked her what her endgame was. Did she think we were going to get back together? Did she think I was going to suddenly forgive her? She said she didn't know, but she wasn't going to let me force her out of her home. I told her I'd give her 1 week to figure out her living situation and come up with her half of the lease break penalty, or I was going to make things a lot worse for her. She asked what that meant. I said she'd find out. Thursday, I did something I'd been avoiding doing because it felt too far, but I was done playing nice. I took screenshots of every single Instagram post from Vegas, all the ones I'd saved before Jerome made his profile private, and I sent them to Megan's boss through a professional LinkedIn message. I explained that I was Megan's ex-boyfriend, that these posts were from 2 weeks ago during a work week, where Megan had called in sick for 3 days, and that I thought her employer should be aware of what she'd actually been doing during that time. Before anyone comes at me in the comments, yes, I know this was a step that some people would consider too far, but Megan had been threatening me, had her family harassing me at my workplace, had ruined my living situation, and was showing no signs of backing down. I needed leverage, and this was what I had. Friday afternoon, Megan came home from work early again. This time, she was absolutely furious. She came into the apartment screaming about how I'd contacted her boss and how I'd ruined her life and how she was going to make me pay for this. Turns out her boss had called her in for another meeting and showed her the LinkedIn message and the screenshots. Her boss had been understanding until that point, but finding out Megan had lied about being sick to go to Vegas was apparently the final straw. Megan had been fired. She stood in the living room yelling at me about how I'd destroyed her career, how she couldn't pay her bills now, how her family was going to hear about this. I stayed calm and told her she'd destroyed her own career by lying to her employer and posting evidence of it online. She said I was vindictive and cruel and that she'd never done anything to deserve this. I reminded her about Vegas. She said I needed to let Vegas go. I told her she had until the end of the month to figure out her living situation because I was breaking the lease whether she agreed or not. She said she couldn't afford to move and couldn't afford the penalty. I said that wasn't my problem. She said I couldn't force her out. I said, watch me. Saturday, her entire family showed up. Lorraine, Richard, and their mother, who I'd only met twice. They came in as a united front demanding to know what I'd done to get Megan fired. I showed them the LinkedIn message and the screenshots. I explained exactly what Megan had done in Vegas and exactly how she'd lied to her employer about being sick. Megan's mother looked at the screenshots for a long time. Then she looked at Megan and asked if all of this was true. Megan tried to explain it away, said the posts looked worse than they were, said I was twisting everything. Her mother asked her directly if she'd lied about being sick to go to Vegas. Megan admitted she had. Her mother turned to Lorraine and Richard and told them they were leaving. Lorraine tried to argue, but her mother shut her down. Said that Megan had made her own choices and had to face her own consequences and that the family wasn't going to support this anymore. Richard tried to say something about me going after Megan's job, but their mother said if Megan had told the truth from the beginning, none of this would have happened. They left. Megan stood there crying and said I'd turned her own mother against her. I said I hadn't done anything except show people the truth about what she did. Sunday, Megan's stuff started disappearing from the apartment. She was moving things out gradually. She didn't tell me where she was going, and I didn't ask. By Wednesday, the apartment was almost empty of her belongings. She came by one last time to get the last few things and to tell me she'd talked to the landlord about breaking the lease. Said she couldn't pay the penalty but that she'd sign the paperwork if I covered it. I said I'd pay the full penalty just to be done with this situation. Thursday, I met with the landlord, paid the $3,700 lease break penalty out of my savings, and signed the termination paperwork. Megan had already signed her part. The landlord said we'd both be clear of the lease by the end of the month and that I could either move out or negotiate a new lease in just my name. I decided to move out. Too many bad memories in that apartment. Found a new place that's smaller but cheaper and signed a lease starting next month. My brother Owen is helping me move. I haven't heard from Megan in 3 days. Haven't heard from Lorraine or Richard either. I don't know where Megan ended up living or if she found a new job. I don't care. The Vegas posts are still up. Megan never deleted them. But I've deleted her number, blocked her on everything, and I'm moving on with my life in a new apartment where she's never been and starting fresh. For everyone who said I should have just walked away, maybe you're right, but I wasn't going to let her treat me like that and face no consequences. She wanted to act single in Vegas. Now she gets to be single. She wanted to drain our accounts and live it up. Now she gets to figure out her finances. She wanted to publicly humiliate me. Now everyone knows exactly who she is. I'm done with Megan, done with her family, and done with this entire situation. Sometimes you have to make people face what they did instead of just walking away quietly. And that's exactly what I did.